Right. Thanks, Chip. So the next, now that we've actually filed the petition, as you might imagine, the administration wasn't particularly thrilled with us. And they didn't plan on making things easy for us either. So we filed in the spring. Shortly thereafter, the court held our petition in abeyance. And the reason they did, there are certain cases before the Supreme Court dealing with the issues of jurisdiction. One of them, of course, being Razul versus Bush. And what Razul decided was that our Article II courts, our federal courts, actually have jurisdiction over people being held in Guantanamo. So they threw out the government, the administration's position, that by putting them in Guantanamo, putting them away from typical jurisdictional boundaries, that they could then try them on their own terms. Through Razul, we had jurisdiction. That means that we could file petitions for habeas corpus for individuals detained in Guantanamo. So that was the first step that we overcome. Once we get to that point, that means we can go forward with our petition. And that was decided in June of 2004. The next is, as I think either Joe or Charles alluded to earlier, we hadn't even been charged. Hamdan had not been charged with a crime. And so part of our demand in the petition was charge our guy. You've held him for 2 years. You've obviously had enough time to get evidence. Charge him. In July of 2004, he was charged with conspiracy. And as we talked about before, it's a general vague crime that presumably could bring anybody who did anything that indirectly aided Al-Qaeda or another terrorist organization under it. So, and part of that, I also want to mention, is that the charge didn't make any indication, and didn't say explicitly that Hamdan had violated the laws of war. It just simply charged him with this general conspiracy charge. The next issue, we finally get to the district court in DC, and they, right before trial, about, 3 weeks or so before trial?
Before the oral argument.
Before oral arguments, actually. So we've already put in our pleadings for the case. We find out that Hamdan has gone before a CSRT, or he's had a CSRT, which is Combatancy Status Review Tribunal. Yeah. And so they've determined that he's an enemy combatant at that point. And so, these steps all fall in line with, they haven't done this ahead of time. We finally try to push them forward. And right before they're being called to task before the courts, the only body that can actually weigh in and rein in the government, they start changing the game. And it continues.